The pandemic came, it is going away, but did it impact the way that your customers buy? Is it affecting or impacting their objections? And on today's episode, we're going to talk about that and find out how and what you can do as a sales professional to make sure you handle this effectively. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast here on TSC TV on YouTube. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, we have the one and only Chris Mele, and Chris and I are going to talk about objections and how the pandemic may affect the way your pricing objections come about. And Chris today, the reason why he's qualified to be here, first off, is that one, he helps companies with their pricing. He is a managing partner at Software Pricing Partners, and he and his team help B2B companies develop the right pricing strategies that delight their customers and, quite frankly, frustrates the competition while minimizing the risk at every stage of their sales and pricing process. So he's going to share with you some ideas today, some things, and give you that insight that what will go into your buyer's mind. What are they thinking? What's going on right now and how pricing could help? So sit back, get your Evernote, your paper, your pen, whatever you have handy, and let's go dive into the episode with Chris. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. I'm really looking forward to this and to having this dialogue here with you because right now we know objections. We've talked about it for the past several episodes, how challenging it is for a sales rep, but more specifically right now during the coronavirus and the pandemic, and we know there's just a lot that's come up in the plate on the plate of sales reps. So we want to hear what's changed. What are some of those challenges that comes when it to objection from the customers right now as a result of the pandemic? And I want to pick your brain on that for a little bit. And I bragged about you at the beginning, but if you don't mind for a second there, just tell us what's your secret sauce, what makes you so special, and what you do.
Oh boy. So
You're like, how much time do I have, Don?
yeah, well, no. So I think that maybe what makes us different is everybody here has former executive experience at a software company. So a lot of the world of pricing and how we help software companies monetize their intellectual property is based in maybe less of the academics. There is a lot of academia, sort of research papers and algorithms and things like that. But the reality is, as you know, because we talked earlier that you sold at a software company, is that that's a really complex environment. And so we have to be very judicious about which academic principles and things that we adopt, because there are real things that work inside of a software company and there are others that just don't. And I started a software company back in the late 90s when I was coming out of Ernst & Young at the time. I was a computer science grad right out of college and didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just knew I loved to play video games. And eventually I got sucked in the world of starting my own software company. Then eventually I hired Software Pricing Partners in '08. And that's how I ended up learning about this whole new field and discipline around pricing. And obviously everything that we talk about in the world of how we price and how we package and how we license our technology has this like direct connection onto the sales force. So I grew up with Gittimer and Duncan and question-based selling and all this crazy stuff that I studied. And I had a sales coach for about 5 years who literally would record 5 years worth of sales calls. And he would say things like, at the 17-minute 29-second mark, when you said this, why did you, you just totally unraveled the whole deal. Like, I don't understand why you would even do that. And from a computer science perspective, from my brain, I was like, this is like super helpful stuff. And so I developed this great appreciation that you can build the best strategies in the world, but if you can't explain that to somebody that's having a conversation with a prospect, you're sort of sunk before you get started. And that's that whole sales dialogue and the power of the choices of words that we pick and how we talk about things either secretively or in transparent mode, and all the things we do to build a relationship, I find very fascinating. And then on the side, I'm an avid scuba diver and I got into free diving that I've enjoyed as well.
Well, next time I'm not a diver, so, but if you come to Florida and you dive off of my coast, then you can let me know.
Fair enough.
And
Gainesville
late
is a
PPP.
hot spot for sunken treasures.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, up in the Treasure Coast, there's always some stuff and going all the way down the Keys.
Yep.
And I'm from Jamaica too, so I don't know if you've
Oh,
done
nice.
in the Caribbean,
I
so
have. I
it's
have. I am going, well, I was going on my 10-year to the Caribbean, but I will be going back to the Caribbean on my 10-year anniversary. So
congratulations on that as
thank you.
beforehand. So let's talk about objections. What's changed, man, with the pandemic when it comes to customers and objection?
I think the one of the biggest changes is risk, aversion to risk. You and this can come in a lot of different forms, but buyers are much more risk averse, especially on new relationships. So if you're coming from the world where maybe you're selling a high ticket item, you'll see this symptomatically as extended sales times, or maybe the offer that you're putting forward. Let's just make up a number and say it's a $500,000 package of services or product or whatever. You can expect the buyer to start to carve that out. Okay, well, how do we start this? Maybe at 1/5 or half the price. And so it's not so much defending value, which I think was pre-COVID, as much as it is maybe defending initial transaction size. And so you're going to start to see those transaction sizes compress. People aren't super crazy about allocating cash.
Yeah.
So people love things like payment incentives and other things that stretch out that cash. So if you're a company that maybe has some fat coffers at the moment, there's things you can do to alleviate that kind of stuff. If you just sort of march your way around all the different types of risk, new relationship risk and financial risk, and whether or not the capability, sort of the product risk, if you will, and you work your way around that wheel, you could probably map out a half a dozen of those things that buyers, rightfully so, are mitigating. And then that's like on the net new relationship, right? On the existing relationships, for people that are coming back to the well for more, there's a whole nother set of, they may have laid off a good chunk of their staff, in which case they bought 10 units before and they only need 5, or maybe they signed a contract in their midterm in the cycle and they've pulled in PPP funding and now they want to ask you to right size. So you're looking at scenarios where there's a bit of backwash that comes into the organization that's been starting, as this thing protracts, and now you have the virus, and then you have the mutations, and then you have now the article that came out with the US based mutations. These are all things that give people pause, and they're things that create stress. And in times of stress and uncertainty, people begin to mitigate and try to get that certainty. And so it's a very tough selling environment. I sold through the dot-com bust and I sold through the 2008 market crash. Each one was different, but they are extraordinarily difficult environments if you're not selling Zoom or productivity tools, or maybe you happen to be selling pharmaceutical software or artificial intelligence that's being used around the virus production. I mean, these are all categories that are killing it, right? So, or security. I mean, if you're in those spaces, you can't help but to just show up to work and you're going to win, right?
Yeah. Or I was talking about this over the weekend to this is my wife. We're talking to some friends about it, and it was the internet with our family members. Like the internet company. I mean, how many more people have beefed up their internet services these days too?
Yeah.
So,
It's I think of things like companies who offer date night packages that they
oh
ship to your
man,
house, kids activities, the remote learning that they're doing now with kids to augment their I have a 7 and a 4-year old,
yeah.
and they have these little, 2 to 4 hour courses you can get. I mean, there's categories of people and new business models that are spawning like mad, and it's awesome to watch. But then there's obviously the other category that people aren't doing as well as we hope.
Yeah, I mean, so 100% with that. And I'm thinking as a sales rep, how do I go about doing this? You and I were joking before the episode started. The sales reps coming in the meetings now and dropping their everything, spilling their candy, lobby, so to speak, and saying, "Hey, we can get it to you for really cheap," or "I need to hit this quota number." I imagine that's probably not the most effective way to handle these objections these days.
Well, that response assumes that you've uh, you've solutioned the array of problems of why people aren't buying, and you've said definitively that it's price in every single category, and that's not correct at all. In fact, I know many companies who have premium price products who are doing quite well right now, and in a couple cases have raised their prices. They have less amounts of customers coming in, but they've been able to isolate who they're serving and at that, and sort of really substantiate that premium value. So, in general, if you start the conversation off with the idea that a deal can be had, or as I would describe, when you hang word nuggets around the pricing of what it is you're offering that imply flexibility and all these other things sort of early on in the sales dialogue, you have officially destabilized the deal, and the idea of defending any sort of value isn't really in your cards. And whatever the sales cycle range would be, let's say it was 30 to 90 days, you've guaranteed you're on the 90-day part of that. You're at the top end of the range, because when you signal to a buyer with these word nuggets of, hey, it's a really great quarter, and hey, I don't know if you know this, but it's a really great time to buy software, Donald, and all that kind of cheese stuff, then the cheese grater comes in, right? And if you're in the enterprise space where we're selling really large deals, the procurement teams, they'll eat your lunch.
Yeah. And I think the idea there of procurement team. I just did a webinar with a gentleman, and we were talking about procurement and how more and more organizations are handing that power off of to the professional buyer, so to speak. Yeah, if salespeople aren't equipped to that, it's especially in enterprise deals, you're done for. So
Well, they know the game. Yeah,
yeah,
they figured it out.
what I'm on your team. I'm your sales rep. I'm coming to you with some of these challenges that I'm hearing. So these are different objections that are coming up. People are risk averse. How would you coach me through that to handle these objections, Chris?
Well, remember, my perspective is going to be B2B software
Yeah,
companies, and there are corollaries and connection points to other kinds of business models, but just kind of keep that in mind
sure.
from my perspective. So in the world of pricing, there are many other things that you can do outside of the price that you're charging. Like, so for example, let's say that the service or the product that you're offering is a $10,000 ticket item, and people are objecting because they don't want to spend that kind of money. The first place you can start to look is, well, what is it that you're offering, and do you need to offer all that?
Hmm.
Because if you don't need to offer all that, and you could offer half that, and I'm going to be silly and say, we'll take half the price, even though don't ever do that analysis. You never look at your costs, always look at the value that you're providing. So if you take half the things out of there, you still might have 70% of the value. But the point is that what you're offering, this is a time to revisit. Who is it that you're, well, we'll cross that bridge in just a second, but revisit who it is that we're offering it to, right? So this is the idea of what we would call customer mix. Prior to COVID, you probably were serving a certain mix of customers: big customers, small customers, customers in financial sectors, customers in manufacturing and transportation sectors. Let's take transportation. We can see what happened with that with COVID. So now a big chunk of your customer mix is altered. There's a whole group that is under duress that isn't going to buy, which either gets ignored, which and then you're 2/3 of the market that you're originally going after, or you've looked at a net new market that now you think that you can serve. And so you can't get to that answer unless you introspectively within the organization start to look at what is it that I'm offering, and who it is that I'm offering to, and who ideally do I want to be my customers. And let's make sure that we can name them. Like, let's not say a banking customer, let's say Bank of America, because if you don't serve Bank of America, you might serve Regions Bank, or a Aquesta Bank, or a small, and those are very different, right? One's a big conglomerate, one's a very small local bank. And so that piece to the puzzle of understanding what it is that you're offering is by definition connected to the customers that you're selling to. But if the customers that you're selling to have changed because of COVID, you got to go back and you got to look. Otherwise, you're stuck solutioning around the price point. And then what happens is you keep the same offer, it doesn't resonate as much anymore. Then you say, well, instead of 10,000, offer 8,000. and we get the rodeo Donald. It's a really great month. You can have a $10,000 product that you don't need because you don't need all this stuff, but I think I can get it to you for 1,500 if I go talk to Brad in the back, and all that silliness that buyers, get really uncomfortable with. And by the way, that rodeo, that song and dance of, I think I can talk to somebody and get a special deal, is only really happens in one dominant category that everybody usually has a phraseology of disgust with, and that's when you go buy a car.
Yep.
All right. So anything else outside, and by the way, I think that whole model should have changed a long time ago, but anything outside of that, you don't really want to be in that space, because if you sense that, the buyer wants the confidence to know that what they bought was at a reasonable price, that it was fair and equitable, and that they didn't get taken advantage of. That's another reason why we don't hang all these word nuggets, because it implies that, well, if you can be flexible and there's an arbitrary decision made in the back, well, then that means other people had an arbitrary decision. So now I need to understand everybody else's arbitrary decision, because if it was a range of 10 to 20%, I have to be at the 20%, Donald, because I can't be at the 10. So this is what, just takes the sales cycle on steroids and stretches it out, right?
Yeah, it's like, what am I missing? What am I getting screwed on? And then and I think that puts it in a sense of the distrust instantaneously, because and I also feel if you can talk to Brad and bring the price down, then why didn't you tell me a lower price to begin with then? So you were trying to add me already. So
well, and you don't tend to do that until near the end of the sales cycle. And now you're really horse trading, and that's terrible, right? Yeah. Because you don't do that. I mean, you do not younger, but more inexperienced sales. Some younger salespeople are killer, by the way, but inexperienced salespeople who haven't done it before will exacerbate the problem up front. But if you're doing that near the end, it does erode trust. It's like this posture that you had, that if I didn't say anything, you would have let that transaction go through. I would have been taken advantage of. And I think that idea that we're talking about with trust just comes back to transparency.
Yeah.
If you understood that, look, if you bring me this kind of volume, you earn this kind of discount. If you bring me a deal that's in a net new vertical that we're not in right now, because let's say we are going after healthcare and we don't have anybody in healthcare, then that first logo or two, they're bringing net new value. We have a deal desk function that will prove that, but you should be able to describe that entry criteria for how those discounts are earned. And if you can't do that, then we have a huge problem. And it's really unfortunate, because most companies can't do that, right? Because everybody was onboarded in the software business as sort of product market fit. Pricing really wasn't a discipline. And so then when they get out, everybody's just used to that 90s style of selling, which is they want to charge what customers are willing to pay. The problem is that they try to maximize that on each customer. And that's not the right application of, if you're maximizing willingness to pay, you're saying, I'm serving a broad array of customers and I want to maximize the portfolio. I want to maximize all the way up to the point where I stop creating friction in the sales process. Maximizing has been co-opted to convert into this nefarious thing where Donald looks like he's got his own company, so I'm going to charge him a little bit more, and that's a pretty nice mic, so I probably don't have to mention that. I have to go talk to Bob in the back. And that's not if any sign of any of that happens, especially on COVID, it's a double whammy, right? Number one, prior to COVID, you probably got away with that, right? That's like the norm. But on top of COVID, if you do that, and you are doing that into a commercial space and a customer that's under duress, or maybe has PPP funding, or in some way needs your software to survive, now we're taking advantage.
Yeah.
That is not the reputation you want in your brand. Now, on the government space, they have what we call the MFN clauses, most favored nations. And the government will go in and they'll inspect. And if you went and you discounted a commercial customer an extra 10%, they'll make you go back and give that credit to them. And I've often thought that they should do that on commercial too, frankly. And the most wonderful thing that a salesperson can lean on is market fairness. They can say, look, I understand, Don, that you want an extra 5% discount. I can't give that to you, or I'd have to go back and give it to the other 1,000 customers, and that would make this deal totally unprofitable. I can show you how to earn another 5% discount. You can buy more volume. You can take advantage of this payment incentive. You can take advantage of this sales promotion, but those are all program things that are offered to everybody, right? And if
Yeah.
you can't sing off that playbook, then we have the rodeo, right?
Yeah, and I feel that what comes back to that is the maturity in the seller's capability, right? When it comes to objections like that, it's you being able to, one, understand the buyer's business, and two, understanding your business, and the challenge, three, or value that they're trying to that they potentially could earn, and you being able to help sally the conversation down those paths rather than quickly saying, like you're saying, go back and going past market fairness and just dropping the price for everybody.
Yeah,
Or
it's a two-part dance. One part is the salesperson, the other part is the company. Now, if the company falls down and doesn't have this structure for you to leverage, not all is lost. You as a salesperson can still adopt, hey, if I'm going to have these kinds of criteria, and you can get together with your team, and a lot of our customers have done this prior to engaging with us, and we can say, okay, Don, you and I, we're going to agree that if it's a new logo in healthcare, we're not going any more over 10%. You can institute your own rules, but
yeah,
the challenge that you have on a sales team is, if left unfettered or uncontrolled, each salesperson does it a little bit differently. And there are scenarios where the customer will call two reps and get a different bid. And boy, that's a bad day, right? But even if they can't do that, there's nothing stopping a salesperson to having some discipline. Just write down the rules of engagement and what you're willing to offer, and be super open about that. And if you write them down, then it enables you to be super open about the algorithm behind that. Hey, if you do this, it's 5%, and I'm just letting you know that up front when we get to the finish line. It's that when we get to the finish line and all these new things pop up, like, well, I don't know, I mean, I guess I could get you free implementation if you do a little song and dance for me and wear that hat I asked you. Like, it just doesn't. It's a way of selling that's dying very quickly. Let's put it this way: it's a way of selling that maybe it's like, if you were in the computer science world, it's like COBOL. There's still COBOL code out there at the banks and other places. It'll be around forever. This way of selling will be around forever, but every day that goes by, it is less and less and less effective.
yeah. Chris, we've talked a lot today. If there's one major takeaway, one major piece of advice you'd want sellers to hear when it comes to what changed when it came to objections during this time period, what's that one major piece of advice you want them to walk away with?
Well, we talked that price isn't always the the reason why somebody would buy or not buy, but it is an important part of the dialogue, because it now represents money that's being invested, and that money that is removed from the customer site and put into your company bank account does represent risk to them. It does reduce their ability to potentially pay their staff if they hit a difficult time. So I think that the thing that comes to mind is, if you've ever watched the National Geographic, I think it's called The Birds of Paradise, and I think it was on the Earth series, and it
Yep.
shows
It's
the
exactly.
two birds, yeah, doing this thing, this whole song and dance for an hour, right? And then they're thinking like, man, this is super involved for something pretty straightforward. And so then I think, well, if you applied that to the sales process for just a moment, this song and dance, one bluebird, the seller, doesn't really want to talk about the price, because he wants, or she wants, to show the value and all these other things and match the needs. But then you've got the buyer on the other side that's just saying like, I really need to know if we're in the same ocean. Like, sometimes we're not even in the same planet, right? So I think that the one takeaway that I have found that's super effective is, be more transparent and open around the dialogue with pricing early up front. And sometimes people don't want to do that. They don't want to say that, well, I know I'm the premium player, so let's just say the number's 50 grand, and maybe I'm a product company or something, and everybody else is in the 35 grand space. So they don't want to say that 50 grand for fear they get ousted, right? So when you have little information, it's really dangerous to show a price. So you just open the range. You say, we have scenarios and whatever that is, from 35 to 75 grand, right?
Mm.
And there's tons of sales books that are on there, but I always loved on the ranging phenomenon. When you range them and you are the 50 grand price point, don't range them from 35 to 50 grand, because now you're at the top end of the range. If you
Yeah.
range them from 50 to 75 grand, so when you come in, you're near the bottom of the range. And my point of that is just transparency and the command of the economics of the deal are super important right now, and to be able to do that in a transparent way. And if you can't do that in a transparent way, you need to take a break from the selling lines and write down what that little playbook looks like, so that you can really start to educate buyers around the economics of the deal that they're doing with you. And I think the earlier you do that, the more successful you'll be, provided that you're not in an ocean apart.
Chris, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
They can go to softwarepricing.com. And we serve B2B software companies. That's our 100% focus.
Awesome. Well, Chris, we appreciate your time today. We're going to put that in our show notes, and so folks can get back connected to you. I appreciate your advice today and your wisdom, and for helping us out with this. Thanks again.
All right. All the best. Take care.
Listen, that was Chris Mele, and if you want to get connected with Chris, you can find all of his details. You can go back into our show notes, or you can just simply go to softwarepricing.com. Again, softwarepricing.com. Get connected with Chris. You can find him on LinkedIn, and dude is just an amazing individual to connect with and chat with. I highly recommend you look him up and to become friends with him and just learn. I mean, the people come on the show, like the wisdom that they part to us, if we applied all that stuff, it would just be amazing. It'll be magic. So here's what I want you to do. If you haven't done so already, connect with him, subscribe to this channel, and then also subscribe to this podcast if you haven't subscribed to this podcast as of yet. We really love that. And leave us a comment. Let us know, man. You can hit me up on LinkedIn too, Donald C. Kelly. I want you to take advantage of our sponsors. They're giving away some great insights, some great information, some great access to their solutions, and it's for you. It's a TSC offering for you. So take advantage of it. Test it out. I love them, and this is why I recommend them. As always, I want you to find more ideal customers. I want you to know what to say when you reach out to them. I want you to close more deals. But most importantly, I want you, yes, you, each and every single day to go out and do big things. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you enjoyed the content, I ask you to go ahead and hit that like button, that thumbs up at the bottom right-hand corner. Also, to make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest sales strategies, latest tools, and things that are going to help you to not only find more prospects, but to close more deals. Thanks so much.